maybe all of those will be terrible thumbnails, but at least I tried. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sonya. If you're new here, I mainly make content and videos around books. Today I am doing a belated video. It's been longer than I anticipated since my last upload because I was hoping to do a whole Bloomin' Rat TBR video. I filmed it and then my computer crashed and lost all of the footage like mid-edit. So that video is like, it was also pretty unhinged, so I don't know if I would have ended up like being able to salvage it via editing anyway. But that will not be seeing the light of day, unfortunately. Maybe fortunately, maybe it was like some higher power telling me that I should make a different video. Instead, I am here today and I am filming my October wrap-up at very long last. It is already, I think we're like a week into November at this point, so ideally I would have done this sooner, but life was busy. I got my wisdom teeth out. I'm still having some mouth pain from that. I'm still not like fully eating a regular diet yet, so you know, it's like a lot is happening and I'm just gonna take a second and chill and talk to you about some books. I read 8 books in October, which I feel like is a pretty good number for me. I feel like there were some highs and some lows, but I didn't read anything that was like truly terrible that I absolutely hated. So for me, that's a good reading month. Yeah, so I guess without further ado, let's get into the books. And if you wonder why I'm glancing down here, I have my laptop that has some annoyingly reflective stickers, but I have my story graph pulled up so that I can like reference everything I read, because occasionally I'll like think I read different things in different months and it's just good to have a record that I can reference. The first book that I finished in October was Nevada by Imogen Binnie. Nevada? If you're from that place, let me know how you say it, because I've heard it pronounced both ways. And anytime I say that word, I feel like I'm saying it wrong. This was good. It was like not my favorite thing I've ever read, but I didn't hate it. It was kind of a little bit middling for me. I actually read this for a queer fiction book club that I'm currently a part of. This is like an IRL in-person book club. It's quite small, and this was actually our first read, I want to say, yeah, for that book club. So I read it for the book club. I read it as an ebook, which I feel like kind of influenced my experience of the book because I was reading it a lot kind of like in free moments at work, or just like when I had a second and I had my phone but I didn't have a book on me. And actually I felt like the way the novel was written and the kind of style of it kind of lent itself well to being an ebook, because there were these kind of, it's a very interior novel. I feel like there's not a whole lot that happens plot-wise, so if you like can't read something unless it has a lot going on plot-wise, I would not recommend this to you. But we follow our main character, our protagonist, who is trans, and she's just kind of living her life in New York, and she's like not a super likable character, but a lot of the novel is just kind of like her in her own head talking through like a lot of things about queer politics, about her own life, and then she ends up breaking up with her girlfriend and taking a road trip basically, and then it picks up later on with a second character who she meets. Overall, I felt like the most difficult part of this was for me the kind of like shape of the novel as a whole, because it felt very much like monotonous the whole way through, and then it just kind of ends and you don't have a lot of like wrapping up or satisfying conclusion to kind of take away with you. I feel like I kind of understand that choice from the point of view of the author kind of trying to imagine these characters as real people, and like presumably we imagine their lives just kind of going on, and the fact that it doesn't have a neat and tidy conclusion is kind of like, that's more realistic to someone's life, because ultimately like we don't move through our lives being like event, bigger event, like learn something about yourself, and then there's a conclusion, and then you keep going. Like, it just like, real life does not always echo, I think, the structures that we recognize in fiction. Not that that's a bad thing, but I feel like this was kind of an attempt to have something a little bit more like realistic. I feel like that was like a crazy ramble that didn't say a lot, but oh well, I'll probably leave it in anyway. So yeah, Nevada was like fine. I don't know if I would reread it like now, and I also feel like I'm like kind of already starting to forget it. Like, it didn't kind of stick in my memory for me. It's not like a new favorite or anything, but it was fine, and I am eager to read more literature by trans authors, so if you do have any recommendations for that, please drop them in the comments below. The next book I finished in October was Dreaming of You, a novel in verse by Melissa Lozada Oliva. This I like very much enjoyed, but I didn't think that I was kind of getting the full value out of it. It's very lyrical. It has a lot of kind of like repeating images, and it does have, I would say, a loose narrative, but it's not like, it's a little bit abstract. I am not super familiar with the pop singer Selena, and she plays a sizable role in this text, and I feel like had I known more about her kind of like story and her death and the kind of like drama and media circus surrounding that, I might have gotten more out of this as a text, and that's like something I've been meaning to look into more since I finished it, because it made me very curious about that. But just as a pop culture thing, like, it was kind of before my time, and for that reason I felt like I didn't get quite as much out of it as I might have. That aside, a lot of the poems I did really enjoy. I felt like it was kind of hit or miss on the poems individually. Some of them I was just kind of like, this is fine. I didn't outright hate any of them, but some of them like I really, really enjoyed, and some of them I was just like, meh. And I am kind of interested to read more of her straight up poetry, and just like see more of what she does. I am familiar with the podcast that she co-hosts with Olivia Gatwood, who's another poet, but I have not read much else by either of them, so I would definitely be interested to check out more of her work in the future. So the next book I read in October is the only physical book I have with me, and it is Normal People by Sally Rooney. So this one is funny because in the moment I remember really enjoying this and really valuing it. I gave it 4.5 stars on Goodreads, not on Goodreads, on Storygraph. I don't have a Goodreads. And now I feel like I almost have like anemia about this book. Like, certain parts of it kind of stuck, but other parts of it feel like I don't even remember what I read. If you have been on booktube for any length of time, you're probably familiar with Sally Rooney, you're probably familiar with Normal People. We follow two young people, Connell and Marianne, and their kind of transition out of their last year of high school into university at Trinity College, and the kind of ebbs and flows of their relationship. Very flawed characters, a lot of really messed up stuff in terms of like violence and trauma and abuse. I would say if you have any triggers associated with things like that, please check the trigger warnings before you read this. There were moments of this, like, I underlined a little bit. I don't think I underlined nearly as much as some people do in this book. There were definitely certain moments of clarity, and I think for me, more than anything, this made me miss like academia and being in school. I really related to how Sally Rooney talks about just like being in academic circles and the kind of posturing of being in that environment, and like people in classes who like say things and you're sure that they haven't done the reading and they're just kind of like going off and like attempting to say something that is really just saying nothing. There is a passage in here that talks about, I think Connell's at a reading, and it talks about kind of like just the conversations that he has with people there and with the person who's just done the reading. And I think that's, for me, that was like probably the most interesting part of the book and the most relatable part of the book was the kind of conversations around academia and writing and like meaning and kind of how people in those circles talk to each other. I definitely am still planning to read more Sally Rooney. I really want to read Beautiful World, Where Are You? And Conversations with Friends. Those are like next on my list for her. I think she's also written a couple of short stories, but I haven't really looked into those much. So yeah, I wish I remembered more of this one. I still don't know quite how to feel about it and how much I actually liked it or not. Like, yeah. Weird reading experience, I guess. Maybe part of it is that I like read a lot of this while I was sick, and that's why I didn't internalize as much. I don't know. The next book I read in October was Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyemide. I apologize for butchering that if I pronounced it incorrectly, which I probably did. So this is dark academia. We follow two black students at a majority white prep school. This one was like, I almost DNF'd it, honestly, up until like about the halfway point, and then once we got into like the last 200 or so pages, I felt like that was when it kind of turned and I was like, oh yeah, I do really want to see what happens. I did predict some of the twists in this, and I am kind of two minds about it because I feel like on the one hand, it talks about a lot of really important issues. I don't know if this is technically YA, I think it is, but I am like fully on board with the issues that it tackles, and I think it's really important to have more YA and more novels in general that are dealing with these issues, namely racism and just kind of the messed up nature of the academic system at large, and all the kind of flaws therein. I think that is like a very important thing to be discussed. However, I just really did not like mesh with the writing style in the beginning, and I felt like the pacing of the whole thing was like very uneven. Like it felt super slow at the beginning, and like there was hardly anything happening, and then like all of a sudden the momentum picked up like at that 200 page mark, and then it kind of slowed down a little bit, and then the ending was like super fast, and I felt like it could have been a lot shorter than it was and still had like as much if not more impact. Not wowed by the writing style, but really interested in it, and ultimately I think it has a lot of good things to say. Yeah, if I had like a high point overall of this month, it would be And Now I Spill the Family Secrets, an illustrated memoir by Margaret Kimball. I absolutely loved this. The last like 30 pages had me like so tense. I was by myself because I was cat sitting for my mom, and at the time I was like reading this in the dark, and my cat like ran into the room and like jumped up beside me very quickly, and I like literally almost jumped out of my skin because I was just so tense reading this. However, overall I wouldn't say that is like the experience as a whole for the text in its entirety. This is, as the title would suggest, an illustrated memoir, so it's like a graphic novel, but it kind of follows the author as she is growing up, and it talks a lot about mental health. So her mother, it opens with her mother's suicide attempt when she was a child. Again, trigger warnings, look them up, please. The whole memoir kind of centers around these themes of mental health and trauma and childhood, and the kind of ways in which mental health is negotiated kind of like within a family. So for her grandmother also had a lot of serious mental health issues, her mother did, and then later we find out that another member of her family is kind of dealing with something similar. And a lot of it is about her kind of navigating memory. It's also very much like a rigorously researched piece of work, which I really appreciated. A lot of the images are of like spaces that were particularly important in her childhood, and a lot of those were like researched using public records of various kinds, and like going places in person and taking pictures and then drawing them from drawing those spaces from photographs. But overall, I would just be so interested to kind of learn more about the process of how she went about this. And another thing I really appreciated was that it seems like she is so conscious of kind of her role as a narrator and as an author, and also as someone who's a part of this family who doesn't want to like represent people in ways that they don't want to be represented, and kind of like the kind of responsibility of authorship, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. If you want to hear more about this, I just like rambled about it a bunch, but I did actually do kind of a mini review for it on my Instagram, so if you're interested in checking that out, link will be down below, as always. The next book I read was Borders by Thomas King with Natasha Donovan. This is a graphic novel, and it's on the shorter side. I read this because I'm actually currently working on a future video, and I'm gonna be reading things kind of over the next couple of months to prep for that. I'll let you guess what my video is gonna be about. This was very kind of mid for me. I thought it was, I thought it kind of talked about important themes, and it was interesting, and I really actually enjoyed the kind of color scheme of the whole thing. It has all these really beautiful kind of reds and browns and kind of sunset-y colors, and I liked the art style as well. But overall, I was not wowed by it. The storyline is basically about this indigenous, but in Canada, not in the US, indigenous family, and their kind of interaction with identity and border crossings, and I don't really want to say more than that because I don't want to give away the kind of whole plot of it, and it is kind of kind of a circuitous, cyclical thing, I guess. So a lot of the novel is about repetition, so the kind of crux of it is a thing that I don't want to say because I feel like it'll spoil it. However, yeah, I feel like this was just kind of okay for me, and I am really interested in reading more Indigenous authors and more graphic novels. I feel like this has been the year of graphic novels for me. I'm also currently reading On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, which is it's so good. So yeah, if you have graphic novels to recommend to me, again, description. I feel like I just keep doing this for the whole video. But yeah, that's Borders. The next one I read was The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling, and this you have probably heard about if you're on BookTube really at all. The Ex-Hex is kind of a witchy, spooky romance, or fantasy romance, I guess. I kind of blew through it in a couple days. It was the perfect thing to read while I was recovering from my wisdom teeth extraction because it was just super light and it didn't require too much kind of mental energy from me. So this one for me was a 3-star. It was fine. It did what it needed to do. It is not super deep. It is not super literary, but that was not what I was looking for. I would definitely recommend that people read this in October. I had another one on my list for this month called Payback's a Witch by, I think it's Lana Harper, and I was planning to read both of these and then I only got to one of them, so I'm actually saving that one for next year because I went to go read it in November and then I was I really feel I should save the witches for this time of year. So yeah, that was The Ex-Hex. I definitely enjoyed it. I recommend it if you're looking for some kind of lighthearted fantasy reading. And the romance was fine. I feel any romance now that's not queer, I'm just okay, whatever, they're happy, cool. But it doesn't really do anything for me because I don't really see myself in that. But yeah, it was fine. It was good. That's all I have to say about it. The last book I read in October was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan, and this was actually a surprise for me to pick up. I kind of was just I read it as an audiobook and I was kind of just searching on the Libby app for an audiobook to read, and I just came across this one, and on a whim I saw that it could be checked out right away, and I was just okay, let's do this. It's been a really long time since I've read fantasy of any kind. When I was much younger, I would say grade school, so yeah, pre-middle school probably, or up into middle school. I read a lot of fantasy. It was most of what I read was probably fantasy. I don't really know why I stopped. I just kind of drifted away and got more interested in other genres. But this one I really enjoyed, and it was definitely a change of pace for me because I found that the kind of narrative style of it was so reminiscent almost of fables that I remember reading as a much younger person. But definitely if you're looking for escape and something that is just gonna take you out of this present moment, and the kind of reality that you're in right now, this real tangible world, I would say it definitely did that for me. Again, great for recovering from wisdom teeth because I could just lie there and close my eyes and not have to focus on words on a page, which was awesome. But yeah, it is quite long. It's definitely longer than I anticipated. I think it's 18 hours or so, But definitely good for a long car ride. And I did have like some familiarity with the source material. It's based on, I think, traditional Chinese folklore and the goddess of the moon, Chang'e, and the kind of her like immediate descendant, who's her daughter, hence the title. Yeah, it's super intelligent. I know you come to this channel for like, you know, just incredibly eloquent description, and I aim to provide that for you. Had a little bit of familiarity with that from two different movies. One is Turning Red, which is a Canadian animated film about a family curse that turns the women in the family into red pandas when they get like super emotional, which highly recommend. I loved that movie. It's so cute and it has a lot of really great themes, I think. And then the other one, I actually am blanking on the title, but it's a Netflix animated film, and it's about that myth. Basically, like, I think it's been a while since I saw it, but it is also about that kind of like family unit, the daughter of the moon goddess Chang'e, and Hui, who's her husband, who she gets separated from. The daughter of the moon goddess has a lot of like really rich details, which I think really suited it well to the audiobook format, and it really allows you to kind of like picture everything to the fullest extent. Like a lot of the narrative takes place in the Celestial Kingdom and in these various kind of like fantasy courts, and there's all this super incredible description of like exactly what they're wearing and all the colors and like enchanted robes that have cranes that like can like fly up and around them, and yeah, there's just like a lot of very cool stuff there. And I think it was also well balanced in terms of like having some like very like heavy, high impact action scenes, but also having some kind of like more reflective moments. For me, it could have been a little bit shorter. I felt like the second part of it, maybe like the last third or so, like lagged a bit, and it felt like the plot was kind of like she was just trying to make it longer. I don't know if that was true, if she had like a minimum page count, I don't know. But it felt like there were certain moments where like it could have ended and then it just kept going. So yeah, if you're looking for a new fantasy, I will definitely be picking up, I think, the second one. I think there's another, I think it's a duology, so I think there's another book, and I think it's primarily focused on Chang'e and Hui. I'll probably be picking that one up just to see what it's about, and if you're looking for a new fantasy read, I would recommend that one. Okay. So I guess that's everything that I read in October. As always, if you liked this video, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to see more content from me, tap the subscribe button. If you have any video requests, if you want to let me know what you're reading, what you've been enjoying recently, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you. I'm always happy to talk about books. Hopefully there will be much more bookish content coming in November because I am doing the Blue Moon Readathon. I think I'm going to try and do hopefully a reading vlog because I am trying to read a lot this month. But otherwise, I hope you're well, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!